to answer questions that we keep asking every day here in Washington when it comes to monetary policy, when it comes to fiscal policy, as we still try to figure out what in the world is going to be happening soon on Capitol Hill. With a funding deadline on the 14th of March. Do you remember that? That's less than 6 weeks away now. Fewer than 6 weeks. And we hear from a couple of Democrats already that they may be prepared to force a shutdown over Donald Trump's raiding of the cookie jar in agencies like USAID. I had a conversation about this whole buildup to reconciliation in the House with the man who is charged with getting the Trump tax cuts extended. No pressure, of course, for Jason Smith, who is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. Here's what he told us on Balance of Power.
We said it crystal clear from the beginning. The speaker's been very, very clear, is that there's going to be one bill. They can pop over a budget resolution. We can also drastically amend it and send it back. The best and quickest approach to deliver on all of the president's priorities that he campaigned on and 77 million people voted for is to be done in one big, beautiful bill.
What if it's not beautiful? What if it's one big Frankenstein of a bill? That's how these frequently go, and that's where we start our conversation with our friend Nathan Dean. He's taking calls from clients, including you today. Of course, senior U.S. policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. Nathan, it is great to see you here. Can you believe we are still having this same conversation? I think we can rewind the tape to the end of last year on this. Nathan Dean, when are they going to figure this out? The Speaker of the House is supposed to be briefing his conference this morning on the contours of a bill that we still can't even quantify here on Bloomberg.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we were having this conversation in October of this year. I mean, but from a market perspective, let's look at it this way. Whether you get one bill or two bill, it really doesn't matter. I mean, from the market perspective, what they want are essentially a couple of things. They want clarity over what's going to happen to the Inflation Reduction Act. That's probably going to come in this tax debate. And they need the tax cuts extended, and you need the debt ceiling dealt with. Those are probably the top three items, I think, from the market perspective. So whether you move with the Senate bill now, which deals with border defense, energy, domestic production now, or a House bill later, ultimately they still want to get it done. And the only real deadline in this is the X date for the debt ceiling, which is probably most likely June or July. Or the tax cut or the tax reform deadline when the individual tax cuts increase for individuals at the end of the year. So Congress has a lot of leeway of what they can do here. And so one bill or two bill, Washington, we just go back to this idea that when Washington can't figure something out, the easiest thing for them to do is to kick the can. And I can certainly see this playing out through the rest of the summer and potentially even this fall.
Oh, did everyone hear what Nathan just said? So we won't shut down March 14th. We just kick the can for the rest of the summer. Lindsey Graham is apparently expecting something similar here. He's marking up his own budget resolution tomorrow and Thursday. Nathan, that's got us all talking about the Senate jamming the House. Is that a fantasy, or could that actually happen?
No, look, the Senate usually gets what it wants. I mean, that's something that, anybody who's watched Congress knows. The Senate usually gets what they want. And the problem or the challenge for House Speaker Mike Johnson now is the Republicans only have 220 to 215. They have a 5-person majority when they have everybody there in the chamber voting. And so when you have to cram together a gigantic, one big, beautiful bill, everybody's one sticks to their guns. Is it going to raise the deficit by $1 trillion? Well, then you lost the deficit hawks. Are you not going to raise the SALT deduction? Well, then you've lost the SALT caucus out of New York. And so it's almost like whack-a-mole, where you have to try and figure out how to get this big Pinocchio, perfect, Goldilocks, better way of saying it. And I'm not sure the House can do it. And so when the House can't do it, the Senate is there just to say, look, you didn't do your job. We're going to jam you up, and you're going to do what we say.
I'm sticking with Frankenstein, Nathan. I mean, the bigger this gets, I'm guessing the less beautiful it will be. And then you're going to have more people to upset, of course. And whether the Senate jams the House, you're talking about October. I mean, politically speaking, if we can pull off the side of the road for 1 second here, Nathan, you know how this stuff goes. Where is, forget approval ratings for Congress, where's Donald Trump's approval rating if they can't get anything done until the fall, if we're walking up on a deadline at the end of the year?
So I don't think President Trump's approval rating is going to take a hit all that much. I mean, from the White House's perspective, I think President Trump, yes, over the holiday break, he said that he wanted to do one big, beautiful bill, but I honestly don't think he cares. he gave his priorities to the House Republicans last week at the White House. No taxes on tips. Carried interest provision goes away, taxes on billionaires for sports financing. But at the end of the day, it's the individual tax increase or that needs to be staved off. And I think that President Trump isn't really going to pay too much of a political price until or if the Republicans weren't able to do that. And I do think that they are going to be able to do it. Failure is not an option for the Republican Party here. The challenge is it's just going to have to take this entire year-long process to play out. And there's really no advantage for getting something done quickly if you can't get it done. So I just think that, the Senate is getting a little itchy right now. They're saying, look, we need to give $150 billion to defense. We need to increase spending for the border. We need to actually do some stuff with onshore and or offshore leases. So the Senate can actually go out and say, we're going to get something done. But I don't think President Trump's going to play all that much of a political price here unless those tax increases at the end of the year hit for most Americans.
Got it. From Nathan Dean, who I'm sure is receiving a lot of questions about tariffs and taxes, just like Jay Powell is being asked today. Nathan, how did the Fed chair do with so much uncertainty ahead?
So he kicked the can on tariffs and trade. I mean, he said multiple times that's not his purview. But on the regulatory side, he did say a couple of things that were interesting. They asked him about the Basel III endgame. This is that Biden-era proposal that would have raised capital requirements by 9%. He said that when the new leadership of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the FDIC come in place, maybe they could get something out quickly. To me, that says capital neutral. So that's something the big banks would actually fairly much, I think, enjoy or at least warrant. But I also not exactly sure that the new leadership of the OCC and the FDIC will be on board with that. So we'll see. But in the crypto space, one of the questions that were asked him was, would you unilaterally go out there and declare that you'll create a central bank digital currency? And Jerome Powell just said flat out no. I mean, so that's pretty much as definitive as you can get when it comes to Jerome Powell. So, we did hear a little bit of nuggets, and I think we're going to hear more tomorrow in the House Financial Services Committee because you get a 4-hour hearing, 55 plus members. And when people start repeating questions, they get a little bit more specific.
Well, so what do you expect tomorrow? What should our viewers and listeners be listening for, if not a repeat of today's messaging?
Yeah, so a couple more items on the regulatory side. There's this idea of the supplementary leverage ratio. It's known as the SLR. The big banks have been calling for treasuries and central deposits held at the Fed to be excluded from the denomination of the SLR. This will give them some fairly good leverage relief and so forth, lending relief. Jerome Powell in the past has sort of been on the fence about this idea, but, Michelle Bowman, the governor of the Fed, gave a speech last week saying the Fed should do this. We'll see if the president or if Jerome Powell is up for the task and wants to do that. The other thing I would keep in mind is he's probably going to get more questions on crypto. He got some questions on stablecoins today. There's a lot of stablecoin legislation out there.
Yeah,
they're fairly bipartisan in nature. So I want to see if Jerome Powell is going to give any support to this idea that the Federal Reserve should play a role in overseeing stablecoin issuers.
All right, we're basically out of time, Nathan Dean, but I do see on Truth Social, Donald Trump has named a new administrator of the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration. Terry Cole, DEA veteran of 21 years, he writes, currently serves as Virginia's Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. Is this idea of rescheduling cannabis dead?
I'm still thinking it's out there, but it's looking less and less likely. I mean, obviously, Terry Cole, he has said in the past that he's very much against marijuana usage. And we also saw legislation from Senator Lankford and Senator Ricketts to actually take away one of the tax benefits, even if rescheduling were to go forward. So there's still a lot of detractors out there amongst both, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate towards marijuana. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but it may not be as easy as people thought it was.
With apologies to Stumpy, who is sitting right behind Nathan Dean in his home office. Great to see you, sir. Of course, the toast of Bloomberg Intelligence and our friend here at Balance of Power. Nathan Dean, I want to point you to